Hi everyone. I'm really excited to be doing an interview with Ryan, who's a guest that's going to be describing what it's like to live with schizotypal personality. So, just to get started with the first question, what do you most wish that people understood about schizotypal personality?
I would guess the biggest thing would be um, that it's give us time to talk. Um, that would be a big thing. What we have to say may come out a little distorted or come in. You may have to have it form in jigsaw puzzles pieces, and to put it all together you may have to give us a little time to get there for it. And at least that's the way I know I come across. I'll The way I've been told is I jump in the middle of a conversation. So that's the best way I can think of explaining it. So
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a very helpful explanation. Um, yeah, so thank you. So the next question is then how did you realize initially that you have STPD?
um, I have a weird story behind that. Um, I did not know until my second marriage because my husband is Catholic. And since I had been married before, he had to go through an annulment. And if someone who does not know what an annulment is, it is a it's a procedure in the Catholic Church that, as I put it, I because I'm not Catholic, um, I had to present my first marriage to a group of priests, and they had to decide why um, that marriage should not have existed. So, and to do that, they talked to people in my life and had witnesses, things like that. And one of the things that they did was they had me go to psychologists, and they had me sit down with one, and I went through, I had several evaluations, and they talked with me for a couple hours. And then that psychologist referred me to another psychologist, and we did all of that all over again. And then they referred me to another psychologist, and they did that all over again as well. And then at that time, a couple of years later, I got a paper that said I had schizotypal. So I'm like, oh, so that's how I found out.
That's definitely a one of the most unique pathways I've heard of towards getting a diagnosis. Although I guess I'm glad that in the end you were able to have that information.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so kind of following up on that, what has your experience with mental health providers been like? Have there been kind of more challenging moments or things that have gone particularly well or been a more positive experience?
Uh, there have been challenges um, for therapists. If it's a general therapist, I feel that they may not have um, a good understanding. A lot of it is because they deal with more of a daily living situation. I got a lot of, well, we probably should blame your parents. I got two of them that did that, but I now have one that I research, and they specialize in personality disorders and things, and those kind of specialties help. Um, with medication, I'm very firm in staying with who you have. there was a time in my uh my medical group that they thought that it would be a good idea that you just get who you kind of like just a random lottery. And I every time I went, they messed up my meds, and every time I left, I called and complained, and finally they had enough people complain that they let them go back to their regular, like my nurse practitioner. Like I had worked with her for 3 years. We had a momentum. She knew what I had and hadn't had, and when I was when I was starting to fall, and she knew what was going on. And other and I told every other nurse practitioner, I'm like, I am not mad at you. I am not mad at you, but I want this one. And they're like, we understand. We don't like this either. But it's like our boss is making us. So I would say be nice to them, but still, I think a lot of it is you have to know your voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And I agree. Sometimes like that familiarity with a provider can be so helpful in some situations, especially if they're a good provider or a good fit. Um, and then I think you've touched on this a little bit, but what advice would you give to clinicians who want to work with patients with STPD?
Um, be open for just be open for the possibility, because it's I I don't believe that there's it, all of us have, we're all in our own way. For me, I know that um, I I know in my own way I deal with my own um, it could I it, I can't say the word, but I know that I am very paranoid and neurotic, and be prepared to not, get someone off a tree, because there's a lot of times I go in and I'm just like, and I know a big thing is I'm always worried. Like I think it's all about me. And then am I am I paranoid or am I narcissistic? And he's like, no, you're not. He's like going, you wouldn't. And I feel like that, or I think like everybody's talking about me. Everyone's because I sit there and I'm like, when I look at myself, I'm like, what is wrong? And I think you have to be open to be prepared of whatever's coming through the door. And I think a lot of uh, professions, especially if you specialize in personality disorders, you have to be open to whatever comes through the door, because there's going to be days you don't know um, that person's mood, or their stability. So I think that's a lot of personality disorders even then.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, I think that's such a great point about sort of the variety of ways that people can present and need to be open to that, especially if you want to be a clinician. Um, the next question is kind of a jump in topic, but what do you find the most joy in, and or are there aspects or traits of having STPD that you enjoy having?
I don't know if it's I've learned I don't know if it's joy, but it's a learned um of an acceptance it's okay. I've learned it's okay to be odd. I mean, sometimes you find like you're um so worried about it, but at the same time, I've also just kind of I a lot of times I've just been like going, okay, whatever. I'm not worried about it anymore today. And um I also know I can relate better to teenagers. I think that's a very good thing. My daughter's a teenager, and I can really relate better to her now because so that's actually the best part of it. Um, um, be, because I don't know because of um, I don't know my brain level. I'd like to I'd like to say I have a better maturity level, which I do, but at the same time, I can relate a little more. I'm more relaxed, I guess, better. I relate a little better. I guess that would be it. Um, but I know that her friends and her relate better to me than they do to their parents.
Yeah, I imagine that that relatability really helps with communication with them,
Mhm.
which is wonderful. And then, kind of on the flip side, what do you find to be the most challenging part of having STPD?
Talking to people.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, people can be scary.
It's hard to communicate because I know what I want to say and I want you to know, I want people to know what I want you to know. And it's very difficult to make you understand what I want you to understand because my mind gets stuck and or I jump in the middle and it's I just walk away frustrated like I can't figure it out. Like for example, my dad and I are on two ends of the spectrum when it comes to um just talking and just overall like just handling emotions. Like we love each other. He's not mean or anything. He's just very calm and I'm not so much. And um when he would try to talk to me growing up, I'd be so scared to upset him. I'd be like, well, I don't know. And he would just be like, well, just tell me something. And I'm like, and I don't know. I didn't know how to say it without upsetting him. So I would just shut down. And so I didn't know how to handle it. And then when I try to talk to him, I'd get lost. And then my mom would have to get in there and explain it to him a little. So, but yeah, it was difficult growing up because no one really knew what I was trying to say.
Yeah, it's, I feel like coming across frequent communication barriers with people, especially when growing up, can be so isolating at times and difficult. Um, Personally, I really enjoy or appreciate your communication style. The next question is kind of almost a little bit of a jump to something you mentioned in a previous question of being able to relate to teenagers and maybe to understand your daughter quite well. How does SDPD influence your experience with parenting?
I asked my daughter this one time, and she said that I listen more and I'll I will talk more and like try to explain things more because I probably over explain things because I want to um make sure that she understands what I'm saying as with other people, she's other adults, she says they really they just talk at her and they really don't take that time to listen. So that's how how things go when that happens.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that answer. And then the last question is really just, is there anything else that you'd like to add that I'm forgetting to ask? Or just anything else you wanted to mention about STPD?
No, I'm glad it's being discussed because I know where I'm at. There really isn't. It, they say that it's one of the more wildly I mean, it's more diagnosed, but I don't see it. I'm like going, I don't. I mean, it's not diagnosed in my area, and I don't hear it in really ever. So because the first thing I had to do was when I found out I had it, I'm like going, well, what is it? I mean, I looked at it, I'm like, going, okay, that's me. Um, and so and every time I say something to people, they're like, well, what is it? So it's very frustrating for in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that there's not a lot of firsthand perspectives on the topic, and that's kind of part of the reason I
Mhm.
was so grateful to you for the chance for this interview. So, yeah, I just want to say thank you again for sharing your time and experience. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.